I don't have the bandwidth or the capacity for this. And I'm like, it's
Mhm.
not that you don't, it's there's only 24 hours in a day. How do you want to be spending them? Because you're right, you can't do it all. And maybe it means having to take a step back and rest as hard as you play. And so in those moments, the conversation becomes, how are we getting you time off from work?
Hello, everyone. Are you ready for your day to be brightened? Because our guest today is not only brilliant, she is an actual ray of sunshine. If you've listened to our Ask Us Anything episodes, then you already know her. Her name is Katie O'Malley. She's a career coach, a workplace consultant, and the founder of Encourage Coaching. She's also my partner. Our companies are merging. That's how much I love her and want her to be a part of my day-to-day. Katie has more than 15 years of professional experience in nonprofit and corporate. You're going to hear about her journey to get to this place where she is now, supporting women in the C-suite, in leadership with unique challenges. And I think what you'll really love about today's episode is we talk about the challenges, but we also talk about what to do. So much of what challenges women is out of our control. We need the help of men. We need the help of everyone to move through it. But building self-awareness, building a community, these are things that Katie has done and can help you do. She's just the best. You're going to love her. This is Who's Missing, and I'm Emily Drake. Tell me who's missing. Hi.
Hi, long time no see.
Tell me about your morning.
This morning was good. I let myself sleep in a little bit, gave myself a day off from movement and just did some light stretching, snuggled with the dogs a bit longer. And then I've had coaching sessions, good meetings with Allison. We were doing mock discovery call practice and then had therapy. So it's been a good day. And I finished right at 4:45, 5, and we'll spend my evening how I'm going to spend it.
That's right. So Katie and I met at a networking event. So for those of you who are like, these networking events, oh my God, I don't know. They're not all created equal, but we met at the Professional Women's Club of Chicago a year ago. And I was speaking. And I remember creating that presentation and I was like, I'm not used to just talking for 20 minutes. I encountered you in the audience after we sat together and had lunch. We were seated at the same table. I remembered just one of my top 5 favorite things about you, your energy, your enthusiasm. And I'm just going to also, now that I know you even more and love you and care about you deeply, your fierceness, this ability to be assertive and direct and be kind while you do it. So all that is to say, fast forward to today, Katie and I are working together a lot more. We're merging companies, doing the thing together. That's not what this is about. I wanted to have you on as a guest because I've witnessed how you interact with people and how you lead. And to me, how you do both of those things directly provides a way for women, especially, to address some of the unique challenges.
Thank you for that compliment. You're making me blush.
So tell me, when you think of the topic that we're here to talk about, what comes up for you? Let's just go blue sky with it. I mean, there's some unique challenges. What are they?
They are unique and yet they are perennial, which is a word we were talking about yesterday as well. They're unique, they're perennial. And with women, what is so interesting is we're not just women. We are so many different identities and the integration of those identities. And so, what it means for me to navigate a workplace as a white woman, assumed able bodied, assumed heterosexual, all of these assumptions that get made, my unique challenges can be very different than another woman's unique challenges. And I think one of the first things for us as women is to be able to recognize that, like, yes, we're all in this together and our boats all look a little bit different. If we think about we're all in this together being an ocean, right? We're all encountering the ocean, but the boats that we have to navigate it are different. And I think it's one of the most important recognitions to make just right out of the gate, or acknowledgements.
Yeah, these let me know what you make of this. There is a desire for women to have a conversation about what it's like to be a woman. And sort of up against that, there's also this we want what everybody else has, right? So the unique, but also the not unique.
Correct.
So maybe, and appreciating what you just said about there's so many different ways to be a woman, not the least of which is, we talk a lot about feminine and masculine energy. So given that we have diversity within the gender, do you have a sense of what is, even just with all the clients that you work with, what are some challenges that you feel like are timeless and maybe some that are new?
Yeah, I think timeless, there's this idea of the double bind that was revealed by Herminia Ibarra. And it's this idea that no matter what we do, it's always the wrong thing. If we are being assertive and we are advocating for ourselves, we are the big B in the room. If we are being too kind and too passive, we'll never be a leader. If we are mothers, we're never going to be able to contribute at the same way as a working dad. If we aren't mothers, what's wrong with us? Where is that nurturing gene? And so what I experience in working with my clients, what I experienced working in business schools with women is no matter what, it's the wrong choice. It's the wrong decision. It's the wrong action. People talk about shape shifting and code shifting and code switching, but to what if none of it is ever going to be right? And so everyone is expending an enormous amount of energy trying to be something that they're not because they think it's the thing they're supposed to be, and it's never going to be right. And so if it's never going to be right, let's start showing up exactly as who we are, living into those values in a way that's authentic and not judging and making assumptions first about the other women who are doing that. We are not immune from biasing negatively against each other. In fact, it's almost worse in some cases than when men do it. And so being able to recognize how we're also perpetuating the problem, not all the time, but on occasion or when we're not paying attention and being present, I think one, it's that energy piece, feminine, masculine to the side, just human energy that we have to expend to show up in the right way. But then also the roadblocks that we as women put in front of other women, I think are often invisible and not talked about enough. I went through it, so you're going to have to go through it too. When in reality, I went through it. The choice should be, what can I contribute so no one else has to go through this? And that's why I started my business.
Yeah. So unique challenges for women in the C-suite. So I want to kind of encapsulate challenge number one. I don't know how many we're going to cover today, but challenge number one is this sort of timelessness and timeliness of being, I'm going to lose my thought. I'm getting a head cold and it's really affecting me. The timeliness and timelessness of a gender conversation. I mean, truly, not only that, but then there's this sub-challenge of the part about generations. Why am I fumbling on this?
Hey, I just sent you a message.
Did you?
I did.
What did you send me?
I said, is this one of those moments where we do it right and pause? Is that where the head cold is at?
Good. You're so good. Probably so.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's me and you, which doesn't mean that we can do it anytime, but I really don't feel
Like,
like I'm showing up like I need to show up right now for you.
I- so let's do it right another
Okay.
time.
Okay. I love this. And thanks for coming back. And I feel like since that moment, both you and I have given each other permission more than we ever have in our relationship. So
Yeah.
I know we're obviously here today to talk about unique challenges for women in the C-suite, but what do you think was the challenge that day for me as a coach?
Yeah. I mean,
You're my coach in this moment.
I'm your coach in this moment.
And every day, let's be honest.
In that moment, what I observed happening was a function of internalized capitalism, right? We have to go, we have to produce, we have to do more. And you were not fully healed and recovered from being sick. And that was obvious to me because I've done what you did in that moment. And I know it was an opportunity for me to be your partner and say, what would it be like if we did this another time?
I felt very loved and very seen and excited coming on today. Tell me about some permissions you've given yourself lately as a woman in the C-suite, which is what I consider you. It's a little different than Fortune 500.
Not yet. One day.
So let's stick with internalized capitalism because I think, is it a unique challenge for women? Probably not, but we internalize it, I think, maybe a little differently, given
The other demands that we've been socialized to take on, right? So it's both not just the internalized capitalism of society, but the unpaid emotional and cognitive labor we have to do in our homes. The permission that I got from my therapist actually earlier this week. I'm going through a lot of things personally in the middle of a divorce and getting ready to not just merge our businesses, but really scale and explode them in the very best way. And I feel so grateful for the friends and family and support that I have to be able to make that happen. But this one area of my life, right? It's like this divorce operating system that is just constant running and taking up all of the CPUs in my brain. I said to my therapist on Monday, I'm like, I wish I could just take off the whole month of December. And she's like, do it. And I'm like, are you insane? And she's like, no, I think you are.
I love your therapist.
Oh, she's awesome. And I was like, I don't know that I can give myself full permission to take off the entire month of December with everything that's going on. And she was like, well, what would it be like to scale back to halftime? And so in that moment, I went into my calendar and blocked off every Thursday, Friday in December. Those will be non-working days for me.
Yeah. In your experience, it sounds like you felt that you were bestowed some grace, but also just some understanding of like, this is a possibility. And I think so often in our line of work and in our line of work with the C-suite, there is a lot of black and white thinking, right? I can either do this or this. Is that something you see as well? And how do you see that manifesting? I mean, I just want to talk about your clients. Like, where do you see it with them?
In terms of them giving themselves permission?
Yeah. And like the fact that between black and white, there's all this stuff, right? That you haven't considered, you know?
Yeah. And for me, that's one of the founding principles of Encourage Coaching is to help people imagine all the possibilities. It's not just one or the other. It's an entire spectrum of options. And this goes back to a session we were running yesterday for one of your clients around decision making. Decisions that we make aren't always and shouldn't be judged as good or bad. And if a decision that you make or a choice that you make, for example, with me blocking off those Thursdays and Fridays, I can always say, you know what, this choice isn't serving me. Let me make a different choice once December hits. And maybe it is taking off the whole month. That is an option, right? So
Yeah.
helping clients take off the blinders, imagine all of the possibilities. They don't even have to be good possibilities or the best possibilities, but we need to be able to see the whole field of what the options are before we
Mhm.
think of something as a non-starter or impossible, whether personally or professionally or a mix of both.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what you said about, carrying the emotional labor, the invisible labor, being something that, in addition to internalized capitalism or through it, women in leadership experience. And I'd love for you to just say more about that, what it is. And I ask this because I think women know that it's happening.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's hard for women to name it and then do something about it. What would you have to say about that?
Yeah, so when we're talking about the cognitive and emotional labor of a household, I like to talk to women, men. I mean, we can't do it without the men. We can't have these conversations
For
just among
sure.
ourselves. It's its own essentially organization, right? That you're running,
Hmm.
your own company that you're running with a partner, with a family. You have stakeholders and constituents in the home. And so when we think about the cognitive labor of running a household organization, we're talking about things like who pays the bills, who is the one scheduling the play dates, who's buying the gifts for the birthdays, for the holidays, who's doing the decorating, who's in charge of the social calendar, who's making the choices about where dinner is coming from, or are we cooking it? And if we're cooking it, what are we making? And what are the needs of the folks in the house or the guests coming over? And more often than not, these thoughts and cognitions fall on the woman.
Hmm.
I'm not saying all women, all men, but research shows more often than not, this is what's happening. There's an organization called fairplay.org, and
Love
they're
it.
brilliant. And they help couples and partners navigate all of the things that actually happen in the household. So that's on the cognitive side of things, which is a huge load to carry because you're no longer just when you're a leader, you're not just responsible for yourself. You're responsible for the people in your charge, right? And the people in your care, your team. It's the same way at home. Most of the time, women never just get to think about and prioritize themselves because there are too many, again, if we're talking business language, too many stakeholders in the household for them
Hmm.
to be able to do that. On the emotional side of things, first, we have the stress, the frustration moving through the day in this maddening way of, I have all of this extra cognitive labor and now I feel resentful about it. So
Hmm.
carrying that.
Hmm.
There's also the emotional labor of who is the one caring for the aging parents and taking on the emotions of what it means to transition from the child to the caregiver of a parent. And we are ill-equipped in the United States to do this on a physical level for caring for them and where they live, but ill-equipped emotionally to handle that transition as well. And that can be for your parents, it could be for your partner's parents. Then it's what's going on with the kids at school and all of those elements around, are they being treated well? Are they being treated fairly? Are they happy? Are they suffering? What's happening with the child? We have our fur babies, but all of the emotion that comes along with the thoughts, right? So, like we've talked about before, everything for us as humans is a feeling first, a thought second, and a behavior third.
Yeah.
Any cognition that you're having, any behavior that a woman undertakes is a feeling first. And chances are you're not getting the opportunity to connect with and reflect on those feelings because of the unpaid domestic labor, the unpaid cognitive labor, and you're running your own business or team or company. And there's only 24 hours in a day. And fairplay.org suggests women get less than 30 minutes a day to just focus on
Hmm.
themselves. It's hard out there. to be
Yeah.
a woman right now.
I have this experience, and I'm sure listeners are too. When you speak, I'm like the student. I really am. Everything, you just have such a gift for bringing in resources and statistics that I think really drive this home. Okay, this week's spotlight is on Time's Up Now. By helping change culture, companies, and laws, Time's Up Now aims to create a society free of gender-based discrimination in the workplace and beyond. They want every person across race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, gender identity, and income level to be safe on the job and have equal opportunity for economic success and security. To learn more, visit timesupnow.org. And now, back to the show. I want to go back to this idea that there's many tasks that are invisible, that become visible through this fair play method. I'm not sure if there are other methods, but I'm most familiar with fair play. I'm actually doing it in my own home with Arnie. Yay. And I will say I just got back from a stepmom's retreat in Utah, and a lot of the issues that the other women were bringing up, I was like, fair play, fair play, fair play. So Eve Rodsky, shout out. Hope to meet you someday. You're doing great work, and so is your team. How does it change, Katie, if you are kid-free, if you are single? Because part of what we know, people are having less children and choosing that. And then also, you know, this dynamic of another thing, fun fact I learned at my retreat, the word stepmom comes from like the 14th century.
Really?
Yeah. And it was because another woman stepped into the family after the wife had died. But here's the thing. I'm divorced. You're getting divorced. Divorce, we don't talk about divorce in the 14th century. So it creates this new dynamic, right, of being single maybe while you're a CEO. So what do you make of how it changes, if at all, this experience of emotional and internalized capitalism, emotional labor? What changes?
So I have a lot of clients that are in this boat, right? The research is showing, and I'm about to be back in that boat once
Welcome.
this divorce is finalized. You know, a lot of my women identified clients are in this boat, and what I'm experiencing from them is just sheer overwhelm of, my gosh, how do I go be a pastry chef for 12 hours, not just a pastry chef, the head pastry chef in my kitchen for 12 hours. People are calling off sick. The holidays are coming up. I have a toilet that is overflowing, a dog that needs walking. I walked my dog and now it got a piece of glass in its foot. When am I going to take it to the vet? I take it to the vet. I get a flat tire. Like, I don't have the bandwidth or the capacity for this. And I'm like, it's not that you don't, it's there's only 24 hours in a day. How do you want to be spending them? Because you're right, you can't do it all. And maybe it means having to take a step back and rest as hard as you play. And so in those moments, the conversation becomes, how are we getting you time off from work? Because I think one of the things that happens again, and this is not women specific, it's the human condition and living in a capitalist society, we are humans that happen to do work. We are not workers that happen to be human. And so for this particular client, if you want to have a successful season in your kitchen at the busiest time of your year, my gosh, you can't be going into that running on empty and feeling like your home is not taken care of for when you come back to rest, and you can't because there are too many other things to do. And we were able to coach her through to the point where she was able to take 10 days away after her last team member took their last vacation day. She put in to be out for the next 10 days and explained it in a very clear way. I can't be the best that you need me to be unless I'm restored and energized for the upcoming season. This is why I need the time. And soon employers aren't going to be able to say no to any paid time off request starting in 2024, paid time off is a benefit, and your employer cannot tell you how you're going to use that benefit. And so for everybody listening, at least in the state of Illinois, starting in 2024, you put in for paid time off, you don't have to give a reason why you're taking that time.
I love that. Snaps for that. I want to talk about you, Katie O'Malley. How did you get here? How did you get here to this place of, look, so I'll just do a little bit of the lifting for you, right? You go back to graduate school, master's in counseling from DePaul University. You're a board certified coach. You haven't always been those things, but you've always been who you are.
Yes.
How did you get here? And your own process, right? Because I think this is important when it comes to I could tell you all day, you need permission, take time off, right? How have you gotten to a place where you can have that compassion for yourself? I know it's a work in progress, to get help and to walk through life with some support.
Brene Brown says it so well. She's like, if we keep hitting the snooze button on the alarm bells that are ringing in our life, one day we're not going to be able to hit snooze anymore. It's going to become an emergency. It's going to become a crisis. And that's essentially what happened for me. So if we go all the way back to 2004 in college at Miami of Ohio, and I say that recognizing that's 20 years ago now. And for me, I feel like I can reach back and touch it. But I was a political science major. And when I went to college, I wanted to make a difference in the world. And my dad was like, go into business. You'd be so good at business. And I'm like, I don't want to wear the high pants. That was my reason for not wanting to go into business. I don't want to be constrained in high pants and heels. This is how I viewed it.
I love that.
I had an interest in politics. I had an interest in social policy, social change, meaningful impacts that can happen in communities because of the efforts of people. I had the opportunity at the end of my time at Miami, senior year, final quarter, to do an independent study with a brilliant man. His name's Dr. Denny Roberts. He lives up in Evanston now with his family, Wilmette area, and he is just a giant in the field of student leadership development. And at the time, I didn't know that, right? He is exceptionally humble, but he's written the playbook on this and the theoretical perspectives and kind of studying at the feet of a master and not knowing. And so during that time, I was like, okay, there is a place for me in higher education. This is something that I think I would love to do. I understand that now this is a career path that could be open to me, but I also need a master's degree for it. So I'm graduating debt-free in an election year with a political science degree. I can't not explore the thing I thought I wanted to do for my life, which was work on political campaigns. So right out of school, get hired for one of the coordinated campaigns for John Kerry, move up to Minnesota, was in Minneapolis to start, then out at St. Cloud, working on college campuses, getting students registered to vote and encouraging them to vote for change. And until I became a business owner, I always said that was the hardest I ever worked in my life. At the end of the day, it was such a powerful and impactful experience for me as a human to work so hard for something and have the outcome be the exact opposite of what you were hoping for it to be. And then Emily having the recognition, oh my God, I can't do this for the next 10 years until someone picks me up on their staff, right? I can't spend 6 months at a time working for something where the outcome, even if the efforts are exceptional, the outcome is not guaranteed. And then to not know where I'm going next and where I'm living next and where that paycheck is coming from and where the health insurance is coming from. Because y'all, this was 2004. It was hard to access health insurance, especially if you had a pre-existing condition. And so knowing that I still wanted to make a difference in the world, transitioned into the nonprofit sector. Where's the best place to help folks? New York City, of course. So move out to New York City, get a temp job at a law firm as a paralegal while I am doing an internship at the Children's Defense Fund to get my feet wet in nonprofit communications, fundraising and development, get an offer to work at the Innocence Project, doing fundraising and development. And so grant writing, individual donor cultivation, special events, all in service of freeing folks from prison who had been wrongfully convicted using DNA evidence that wasn't available at the time of their conviction. And it was such important work. And what I couldn't put my finger on at the time was I was really disconnected from the population we were serving. And I'm like, I know the work that I'm doing matters. And yet I don't feel connected to it. And some days I feel resentful about it. And I chalked it up to that's because I'm earning $32,000 a year trying to live in New York City. And it's an impossibility. Even, my gosh, I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 women. We converted the living room to the 3rd bedroom. I was so proud of it, living a few blocks from the Empire State Building. My dad shows up to visit, can see the pride. And he didn't tell me till after I moved back to Chicago. He's like, I cried after I left your apartment. He's like, I couldn't believe you were living this way, but you were so proud. Like, I didn't want to rain on that parade. And looking back now, I'm like, I can't believe I was living this way, but it felt so rad at the time. Anyway, moved back to Chicago, take a job at the AIDS Foundation of Chicago, doing very similar work in fundraising and development. So again, my mind is fixed on the compensation component and cost living. This is why
I get that.
I'm like, okay, cost of living lower in Chicago. This is going to make it easier for me to work for a nonprofit, but I still had that same feeling of resentment, dissatisfaction. And there are other elements of the nonprofit industrial complex that we could also spend a whole session talking about. But after about 3.5 years of that, I'm like, clearly money is what's driving my unhappiness. And I had friends. Stability, security. And it was part of it. I'm not going to deny that, but it wasn't the whole story.
Of course.
And I never visited a career center when I was at Miami, never worked with a career coach or counselor or even therapist up until that point. I had friends working in commercial real estate and they're like, come on over. And I'm like, sure. And had I talked to anyone with a helping professional background, what they would have said to me was, Katie, there seems to be a values discrepancy here. What are you going to do when you walk in being driven by values of altruism, being driven by values of impact and wanting to make a difference in the world, when you're walking into an environment that's really driven by the bottom line and how much power can be accumulated? I'm able to say that now. I could not articulate that in 2010, but I walked into that office on the very first day. I already had emails waiting for me from the new brokers that I was supporting, and I knew it was the wrong choice. And that office building was on the same block as the AIDS Foundation of Chicago. During lunch, I walked back to my old office to see folks because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm 27. I left what I had just spent 5 years developing expertise in to do this new thing. And I know this environment's not right, but I didn't trust myself enough to do something about it or believe that there was something I could do about it to fix that position or condition. And the alarm bells were going off and I did nothing about it because I thought there was nothing I could do. And what ended up happening between 2010 and 2012 is that workplace experience on top of the previous workplace experiences I had had really did a number on my mental health. And it got to the point where I ended up taking a 3-month medical leave of absence for my mental health. Was diagnosed with major depression, panic disorder, post-traumatic stress. And all of those were new things to me, right? And during that time, I knew, I'm like, I can't be the only person who's experiencing this. But it was 2011, 2012. No one is talking about mental health in the big picture, but especially not mental health at work. And what we know today is that in an employee's boss or manager has more of an impact on their mental health than their spouse or their therapist.
Yep.
And so as I'm on my medical leave, trying to figure out, like, I have to go back to this environment to earn money in the short term, but what am I going to do in the long term? Because this is not sustainable for me. And so it was then I decided to go back to school to get my master's degree in counseling and really help people at the intersection of mental health and work. Now, instead of going back to work for somebody else, I'm getting ready to merge and work with somebody else who makes me better. And we are on the brink of really, my gosh, closing in on having $1 million business together. And I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. So that's how I'm here with you today. And I'm so elated about it.
Me too. Part of what I hear is like you bet on yourself the whole way through. And lo and behold, it is a hero's journey. But like there's real pitfalls and, you know, I have them too. I also have taken a medical leave for mental health for women listening. And I'm also sort of mindful, like part of what I think we're stumbling upon is when it comes to women in community, there are things that we share that make us unique in that we are women. And then there's also in that sharing, it unites us. So I think the thing that I really feel like is common with you and your clients and me and my clients is this mental health, like the overwhelm.
Yes.
And I hear in your story, and I want to hear what you have to say about this. Betting on yourself is like step one, you know, like you're worthy of, I don't want to say underwhelm. What overwhelm? Underwhelm? Is there whelm?
Just whelmed. I think that's a Michael Scott quote from The Office. I'm perfectly whelmed right now.
Yeah, like is it okay that we have whelm or just, you know, are able to kind of like not have life be peaks and valleys all the time? So speak a little bit to this mental health piece and how it has changed so much that we can have this conversation, and also how women are uniquely connected to that mental health piece, if you think they are. Part of what came up for me as you were talking is like women are often seen as, you know, capable of handling our own issues and yours.
Not even capable, expected to.
Expected. Great. Yes. Yeah. And I want to dispel this myth that, you know, you need to be a therapist in the workplace, but let's speak to it because you can't be. Let's speak to it from this being a unique challenge for women, that piece.
Yeah. And so there was something you said right before this question, and I don't want to lose it. So it's that peaks and valleys. We've become so accustomed to the jarring, disoriented nature of living, right? Those high highs, those low lows, that when we are confronted with steadiness, the discomfort of it makes us think something is wrong. But it's just because we have grown accustomed to a normal that isn't normal. It is okay for things to be steady. It is okay for things to be calm. It's okay to feel content in your life. It's not going to make you mediocre. If anything, it's going to allow you to restore for that next peak or valley that comes. But you don't have to constantly be in what's coming up for me visually in my head is a heartbeat chart. I don't even know what to call it.
Great.
We'll call it a heartbeat chart, but like the up and the down. And then you talk about people flatlining, right? I'm going to encourage you to flatline for a bit, especially coming up on the holiday season. It's okay. You're already doing the most. You don't need to do more, especially if you're coping with more right now. So I didn't want to lose that.
Yeah, great. Received.
So the mental health piece for women, it's interesting. There is an article published that women are diagnosed with mental health issues, illnesses, challenges, 44% more than men. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One, we go to the doctor more, and we are willing to engage in vulnerability at a deeper level than men
Yeah.
for the most part. Again, not all men, not all women, but on balance, right? And
Yep.
so I think for folks listening, that number is slightly skewed just because of the data that is available. But
Yeah.
again, if we go back to where we started this conversation around the cognitive labor, the emotional labor, both unpaid along with unpaid domestic labor on top of a job, it is too much for any one person, single or partnered, to be able to handle. And it's, really interesting too. This other element is starting to emerge. And it's like, okay, well, then women put down the cognitive labor, put down the emotional labor, tell your partner what you need them to do. And it's like, no, they need to figure out what to do. Me figuring out what they need to do and telling them what they need to do to help me. Yes, I want to be able to communicate the need that I need help, but making a list for you to do the things that I need help on goes back to now you're adding to my cognitive labor and emotional labor because I'm resentful that you don't know how to pay this bill, that you don't know where the children's or the child's swimsuit is, or where to pick them up from their piano lesson or practice or whatever it happens to be. And what the term that's emerging for this is weaponized incompetence. So men saying, I don't know how. And it's like, you're a brilliant person. Google it. Figure it out. Don't ask me. But
do what I do. Figure it out.
Figure it out. Don't weaponize that against me, adding to that cognitive, emotional load that you already don't have to carry. And so it's those things that then, if we toss in, again, I think it was the word of the year last year, gaslighting. If we toss that in, making us feel like we're the ones who are inept, being able to do and achieve all of these things, it then calls into question our identity, how we see ourselves, what we're capable of. And so many clients come to me saying, I feel like everything in my life is getting 50% effort instead of people feeling accomplished and being able to give that 80, 90, 100% effort in an area because you have all of the areas that you are covering. And then we feel bad about ourselves and beat ourselves up that we're unable to do it all. We're not supposed to be able to do it all because as humans, we are meant to live in community and be not just live in it, but be supported by it. And more often than not, we are the only support that's holding up the house.
Yeah. Here's the thing that I want to talk about as we sort of round the bend, because I think if there's a step one, and I've said it already, but it's bet on yourself. Step two is community. And I think that one of the things I find, and you know this statistic too, it's very case-based, but in a room of 100 women, this actually happened for me. When I asked them how many of you consider asking for help to be a strength, 3 women raised their hand. So I want to honor, right? Bet on yourself. If you're going to bet on yourself, you're going to need help. You're going to need other people. By the way, Katie, shout out to, the Neolithic or prehistoric times, right? Like we're living more separate.
Yeah.
Right? Our beauty and independence is my number one value. So like, I love that we can do it. We're doing it. You're doing it. If you're listening and you're in leadership as a woman, yes, keep going. But in order to keep going, in order to have this be sustainable, you need us. You need others. You need people. And so it's like, bet on yourself. Get yourself in a great community. If you don't know how to do that, we can help you. And 3, you got to say no to some things. So I'll just say Arnie and I are doing Fair Play. Do you know what we said no to?
Tell me.
This will be controversial. It won't be. We're not doing anything at the kiddos' school. Nothing. Now, a year or 2 ago, this was not even a card that I held. So life can change. You never know. And I love it. And it's like, man, I get those emails. Let's organize this book thing. And I'm like, ooh, I could do that. And you know what? The answer is just no. It's just no. And I realize in that no, there's a grief. I want to honor that, right? Because of course we want to be helpful, but I'm betting on myself. And I know that I can't. There's my time. We all have 24 hours. So yeah, I mean, really celebrating the disengaging, the letting go, the when your partner says, I got it, you got it. Okay, right? I'm going to let go. That's my job. So I think that's empowering. What do you think?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Just because we can doesn't mean we should, especially if it's not going to serve you and what your goals are and what the values are that you either have personally or with your partner or with your family. So the question, does this serve me? Does this serve what I'm trying to achieve? Does this serve the priorities of my household, my family, my community? Chances are the answer is no, and it's November. So if anyone is looking to practice the art of saying no, this is the month to do it.
Might as well.
And remember, when you're saying no to something, it's allowing you to really say yes to what matters most. A no is just a yes for something else.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything you want listeners to do today after they listen to this podcast?
My gosh, there is so much happening in the world at large right now that's taking an emotional toll on us. There's so much happening at our jobs and our work and our families and our homes. And some people think this is controversial or a hot take. I don't believe it. I don't think you believe it, but that it's a hot take. But we went through a global collective trauma for 3 years, and we are coming out the other side with a lower stress tolerance, a lower tolerance for difference. And all of those things have us showing up likely not as our best selves or the people that we want to put forward. And so the action I would encourage folks to take is right now, as you're finding yourself coping with more and more, I'm giving you permission to do less. And I'm going to tell you it's going to be okay choosing to do less, because we need to look at the long game and sustainability, not what you can achieve in a weekend.
I love that. I mean, again, I have about 12 ideas for continuing episodes. So thank you for making time, giving me permission. And I take it. When Katie gives you permission, there really is no other authority. As always, make sure to subscribe to this podcast so we can keep interviewing these lovely people. If you want some behind the scenes content, I'd love you to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Who's Missing Podcast. See you there. Comment, like, share. We want to get to know you as much as we want to get to know our guests.